why BLM protest happened in 2020 and why the protest evolved into rioting and looting, featuring my frustration bar political philosophy. In politics and society, there's a hidden bar that represents the frustration of its citizenship, that are feeling frustrated as a result of their government not adequately providing for its citizens, or if the citizens of a country feel as if the government is not doing enough to improve the lives of its citizens. It is a hidden bar in society that I called or I dubbed the frustration bar. When the citizens of a country feel as if the government is not doing enough to improve the lives of its citizens, the frustration bar in society increases in temperature, going from green into yellow, amber, and then into the red. Green being the calmest, red being the hottest. When the frustration bar is on high in the amber or the red, the people of the country will be more likely to get frustrated, and the more likelihood there is that people in the country will commit to mass protests. And the higher the frustration bar gets, going into the amber and the red, would make it significantly more likely that protests are going to devolve into rioting and looting. I feel, or it is my personal opinion, that the American government has been neglecting its citizens for decades. One of the things that I think shows that is the lack of free healthcare in America, where other countries in the 1900s have had free healthcare, and then America in 2025 still has no free healthcare. So I think in society, America has been frustrated in society in the yellow for decades and decades. Here I am basically displaying a visual representation of the frustration bar in society, where you can see that when a government provides enough for its citizens, or the citizens feel as if the government is doing enough to provide for its citizens, then society will remain in the green. But then, if people of a society feel as if the government is not adequately providing for its citizens, or they don't feel as if their life are improving in any way, then people get more frustrated in society. They might not realize it because it's like a subconscious thing that they don't realize that's happening. When it comes to subconscious behavior, it unknowingly to an individual affects their psychology. So the frustration bar in society is a bar that not many people or any people really realize that is actually present in society, but it is always present in society. Now, I believe that America has been in the yellow and neglecting their citizens for decades and decades. And that is what the black line represents, is the state of America for the last, half a dozen decades or so, with America not having free healthcare, for instance. Now, one of the things that causes the frustration bar to increase automatically from yellow into the amber is if the country is in a state of economic crises. And then when you have a country in a state of economic crises, the tension of the citizens increases, the frustration of the citizens increases, and then society then, and like for instance America, jumped from the yellow into the amber, where that's what the second black line is basically indicating. But I do believe that because of the pandemic, which escalated tensions, because of people were forced into lockdowns, because the government had to, do authoritarian type measures to stop the spread of a highly infectious virus. So because America, and not just America, the whole world, was basically frustrated because of the state of the pandemic, there were a lot of protests that were happening. It was almost as if there was a higher likelihood that protests were happening because of what I theorize is because of the state of the country being in a state of lockdowns and under temporary authoritarian control, as with lockdowns and things. So I believe that America wasn't even in the amber. I believe in that time the reason why the BLM protests were so big is because of the pandemic and because the frustration bar was more likely in the red in America. And, this is the reason why BLM happened and why the BLM protests happened in America and why they devolved into rioting and looting, because people had been frustrated, and it took a state of an economic crisis of a pandemic in order for the temperatures to reach boiling point, in order for protests to devolve into rioting and looting. Going into more detail or adding a little extra detail in the first example of the BLM, the rioting happening during the BLM protests. America had been neglected without having things like basic right to free healthcare for decades, amongst other things that America has been missing out on, like paid family leave or working child tax credit, or the lack of increase in minimum wage for decades and decades. So American citizens have been neglected for decades, with America being on average in the yellow. But in 2020, during the pandemic and during the BLM protests, America was in the amber because the citizens were already frustrated down to being in lockdown as a necessary step to stop the spread of a highly infectious virus. And what basically caused it all, the kickoff, is when a black man got killed in police custody, with the citizens already being frustrated, committed to mass protests that wouldn't have been so big if it wasn't for the COVID pandemic. During this time, America went from amber into the red, which theoretically caused the protests to devolve into riots and looting, because random civilians not part of the protests started taking advantage of the protests and started committing to rioting and looting out of frustration that they felt with lockdowns during the pandemic. The most recent addition and a fundamental ingredient that was missing from the frustration bar is, in the example that I have given, in order for it to all kick off and for the protest to devolve into rioting and looting, there has to be a spark that fuels the fire, that basically causes people to get extra frustrated and extra annoyed. So in order for rioting and looting to happen, there has to be a spark, a singular event that basically causes everything to kick off. So going back to this diagram, there's a diagram down the bottom which I call perfect balance theory. Perfect balance theory is that problems are only created when there's imbalance, and if you were to theoretically find a perfect balance between 2 points, you will prevent problems from being created and being developed. So the more you stay in the green, the less likelihood that there is that problems will be created and being developed. But the more you go into the red, the more likelihood that there is that problems are going to start to be created and developed in society. So every government around the world should have knowledge of this frustration bar philosophy in order to prevent countries from accidentally committing to neglect. Because if you apply the perfect balance theory to the frustration bar, the more that the government provides for its citizens and the more people feel as if like their lives are improving in some way, shape or form, then the happier people will be, and the more that there'll be balance in society, and then people will be, society will be in the green. And the more you remain in the green with perfect balance theory, the more the frustration bar will stay low in the green. So governments need to find balance within their country and figure out how to find a way of improving the lives of its citizens in order to prevent frustrations from increasing. So theoretically, if the government was to find a balance and stay in the green, the frustration bar would not increase. But it's when the government commits to imbalance that the imbalance goes into the red, and then the frustration bar increases in temperature.